For many industries, demand has softened over the last several months. So it would be silly to have a conversation about hiring, right? But is it that silly? Stay tuned and I'll share why now might be still a great time to hire.
Running a service business can be hard. It is not unusual for business owners in industries like contracting, home repair, auto repair, business-to-business services like janitorial, IT and accounting, and many others to feel overwhelmed by all the priorities facing them at any given time. Between addressing the needs of the customers, managing the employees, figuring out the financials, and getting processes in place, feeling like you're making significant progress on your business journey can be difficult. Welcome to Service Industry Success, hosted by Brian Harding. Each week, Brian will look at real-world strategies for building the business you are dreaming of, while also sharing tactics to get through some of the most frustrating parts of business ownership with a lot more ease. Let's get started.
Before I launched this podcast, I did another one where I used to interview. Every week I would interview a business owner I knew or was acquainted with and just ask them, what'd you do well? What didn't you do so well? What are the lessons you learned? What are the things you did that were fantastic? What are some of the best things you ever learned? That kind of stuff. Just a conversation with a business owner where they would share things they learned and mistakes they made. And overwhelmingly, when I would ask people, business owners, what's the biggest mistake you ever made in your business? Not even close. Like second place was not even close. Overwhelmingly, the number one answer was keeping a bad employee too long. And now, fast forward, 7, 8 years or 5 years, whatever it's been, one of the most common questions I get in the current climate with business owners is something that sounds like, how much energy and effort should we put into an employee who just isn't getting it? They're just not performing as well as we'd like. They require a lot of maintenance or a lot of training, and it's just too much. It seems like too much. How much is enough? And part of my answer is always something that sounds like, well, how likely is it the person you're going to hire to replace this one is going to be better? And of course, the answer is different when unemployment's 4% than it is when it's 12%. My standards for an employee and who I would hire and the expectations I had when unemployment was 12% back in 2010, for example, were much different than they are, in 2022 when unemployment's 3.7% or whatever. It's just the way it works. Whether I like it or not, or whether I think it's fair or not fair, when employees think they can lose this job and it's no big deal and they go get another one where they like it just as much, maybe even make some more money, their standards and commitments and perception of what their responsibilities are and obligations is different than when, 20% of the people they know are unemployed, or they know people who are, behind on their mortgage or behind on their credit cards. Like it just changes. And so this doesn't matter what I think is right or wrong or what's fair or not fair. It's just a factor for me personally that how much energy I'm willing to put into getting somebody up to speed or up to hit performance metrics or behavioral responsibility expectations. If it's likely the person I hire is going to be better, then I put less energy into than if it's likely the person I hire is not going to be better. It's kind of like the devil kind of a thing. Like, at least with this person, we kind of have a track record. We know how to coach them up. We know how to lead them and manage them and things like that. The next person won't have less problems. They just have different problems, and at least we know these. So that's part of the consideration. So for many industries, I don't know of a lot of exceptions. There's some, I'm sure, but I don't know of a lot of exceptions off the top of my head. For many industries, demand 2024, that we're midway through the year. Over the last 12 months, everyone is kind of experiencing some kind of softening of demand, and it may not be this month exactly. For some folks, they experienced it in the spring of 2023. They kind of saw a lull, then things rebounded by September. Other industries didn't notice it so much until the fall. Some are just noticing it this year. But overall, it's just a different, buying climate than it was, 2 years ago. And over the last few years, one of the most common things people talked about is like, employees are just, it's just requiring a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And it's like, I'm having to micromanage things. I'm having to babysit stuff. And so because of that, because of the unemployment, we've kind of had to endure a lot of that. But now one of the things I'm hearing pretty regularly is folks are saying, "Holy smokes, I put an ad out and I got a whole bunch of responses. I got way more than I did last time I did this." And it just the hiring climate is just different. I'm not saying it's universal, but it's noticeably different for a lot of folks I interact with at least, where they're noticing that when they put an ad out, they're just getting a different volume of response, different caliber of people, and different experience, and different, better conversations about behavioral things and responsibilities, and not so much just like tasks and actions kind of stuff. And so this is a time where we can start talking about, well, we don't have to wait until unemployment's 12% to start looking at replacing folks that just are not quite performing or just take a lot of energy and effort to get on board. This is a fantastic time to start looking at those roles where people are just require a lot of that babysitting and extra coaching and things like that, and kind of and saying, well, what if we did put an ad out? What if we did find somebody? What if we had these two folks here who are kind of mediocre performers? We found one person who was just like an all-star that would replace him. I think this is a fantastic time to start putting those feelers out. We don't have to wait until unemployment's 12%. Now, and this is counterintuitive because we naturally think, well, why would we be looking to add more people if demand is down 20%? Why wouldn't we be looking to you know try to maintain what we have? It took us so long to get these people. For a lot of folks, like hiring was a real big problem, and I get that. But here's the thing to consider, and I'm not saying like you should start hiring tomorrow. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying a thing to consider is if we wait too long, and too long is a relative term. I don't know what too long is for any of us or any particular industry for sure. But if we waited, 6 months or a year, and then we were looking at laying off people or something like that if demand didn't change or things didn't pick up or whatever, some of those good ones that we could pick up earlier might already be gone. So again, going back to a situation where if we have a couple of folks that are just kind of okay, but we could find one person who was awesome that could replace those two, then let's do that. But if we wait too long, that person might not be available because they might find another job, and if they just found another job, they're way less likely to be looking. And so the point is, this is just a time where it feels counterintuitive to be looking to hire, but it might be one of the best times to kind of upgrade some of the positions where we have folks who are just kind of middle of the road performers. We're kind of coming out of this phase a little bit where we don't have to accept that, because again, the unemployment rate does drive um, behavioral obligations and responsibilities on the part of employees, and it does drive performance. Again, if you look at 2021 or 2022 versus 2011 or 2009, it was just different. And we can begin to look at these roles and say, well, what kind of positions, where are the roles where I've had people there who were just not quite an ideal fit that we could start looking to upgrade? And the sooner we do that, you know, the more advantage we have, because other people won't be doing that. Now, obviously, we have to balance that with demand that we have for our service, and resources we have available for training. There's other considerations. This is not the only consideration, but this is a time to start kind of looking at this. So I'm not suggesting we just like go hire somebody tomorrow, but I am suggesting like this is a time to start looking at like what specific roles. So if you have a leadership team, start asking what kind of where, if you don't know, and you probably already do know, you probably could name who the people are in the middle of the night. If I woke you up out of a dead sleep, you'd probably know who they were. But if you don't, that's okay. Where are the spots where we could look to upgrade some personnel and some employees that are just not quite where we need them to be? And um, how do we start thinking about like how to reach those people who would be a good fit? So I'm going to keep this short today. The point is, it feels counterintuitive to begin looking now when demand is softening, but this is the time that people do start looking for work. If their company is down 20%, they might start having some fears about their own safety and security, like economically. safety is the wrong word, stability, economic stability, or their own um, belief of how stable their environment is or their job or whatever. If you know that the industry is down 20% or 10% or 30% or whatever, um, people are going to start wondering, like, well, what's out there? Because they worry about this stuff. So anyhow, this is just a time I would suggest for folks who've been kind of having these roles where we've been enduring performance and enduring behaviors that are not ideal. It's okay to start looking now. And I'm not saying you have to go hire somebody, but you can't find somebody if you're not looking. And also, if we're not finding out what is out there, it's hard for us to identify when we find a good a good person. I remember one time I was looking for a truck, and I went to like 5 different dealerships. I was like 20 years old. Went to like 5 different dealerships looking for a truck, and I found one I really liked. But I had like 2 other dealerships to go see, and I had to work it around my schedule, so I didn't. It took me a few days to do all this stuff, and after going to the other 2 dealerships, I decided that I liked it was like the third truck I looked at out of like 5 or 6. And I went back and it was gone. And I'll never forget this. The salesman said, 50% of buying a good vehicle is knowing a good deal when you see it. And the same thing kind of applies here. Right. What is the market like right now? What is generally available for these kind of roles where I've been holding on to folks that are not a perfect fit, they're not ideal for what we're doing, but we've been kind of hanging on to them. How would I know when the pool of people has increased where making a change would make sense if I don't have kind of my thumb on the pulse of what's available out there? And so I'm not suggesting you spend $1,000 a month on Indeed, but it doesn't hurt to be putting feelers out or running little test campaigns here and there. Anyhow, long story short, it feels counterintuitive, but this is an ideal time to start looking at how to upgrade those positions because you're going to be more efficient, you're going to be more profitable, the culture is going to improve in your company, you're going to have more buy-in and participation for employees when you have people who are engaged. And this is a fantastic time to start looking for them. So the question for you, of course, is what are those positions that we've got filled with people who are not ideal that we could or should start looking to upgrade? So that's what I'd recommend for now. And that's it for this week. Well, actually, there's one more thing. If you find the information I share helpful, please share this podcast with a friend or colleague you think could benefit. Of course, public sharing is appreciated also. But that's it for this week, and I'll talk to you all next week.